Hey yo, what's up everybody? Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Huddle Chat Sports Show, THC Sports, brought to you by yours truly, the host, as always, Dallas Clark, also known as Indo is my Nindo. Now, if you're new to the channel and you're sitting there wondering, what the heck is the Huddle Chat Sports Show? What is THC Sports? This is going to be a cannabis-powered, yet sports-driven talk show. Around here, we focus purely on sports. We leave politics out of it, but we do infuse marijuana throughout the podcast, throughout the talk show, because it's hard to deny the wave that has been marijuana and that is marijuana. Marijuana has been a part of sports for a very long time. It's hard to deny the impact that marijuana has had on sports up to this point in the history of sports. And it's hard to deny that marijuana is going to be a part of sports as we know it, going from today and moving on through the future. Next week, next year, next decade, marijuana is going to be here. You're starting to see it with different leagues stopping testing completely for marijuana. You're seeing the NFL, you're seeing the MLB not test players and allowing their players that form of therapy, that form of relaxation, that form of medication. You're seeing UFC fighters and boxers and professional combat sports specialists use CBD, use THC in their daily diets, and it's impacting their careers positively. So it's hard to deny the wave that is marijuana. But like I said, we infuse marijuana throughout the podcast. We don't focus on marijuana. Around here, we focus on the sports. And we like to typically plow new ground. We like to focus on those teams, those storylines, those players that just don't get as much attention as they should in the national headlines. It's hard to deny that it's tiresome listening to the same teams over and over and over and listening about the same players over and over and over and just hearing the same stories Monday through Friday over and over and over and over again. It's tiresome. And if you're anything like me and you're getting ridiculously tired of doing that and you have to scour the depths of YouTube and the internet and other blogs and different fan pages just to get an inkling of information about your favorite team, then you found a home here at the Huddle Chat Sports Show. Like I said, we focus on those teams, players, and storylines that just don't get as much attention as they should in the national headlines. We're not going to focus on things just for views. We're not going to focus on things just for ratings. I'm focusing on what the people want to hear and what we're not hearing about right now. Now, let me chill out a little bit. Like I said, we infuse marijuana throughout the podcast every week. And if you don't know by now, I live out here in Colorado. I'm a medical marijuana patient, but not just that, I'm a medical marijuana employee. I'm an industry employee as well. So if I'm not growing marijuana, if I'm not researching marijuana, if I'm not working hands-on with marijuana, if I'm not selling marijuana, I'm consuming marijuana. Marijuana is a part of my life, and it's a part of millions of Americans' lives as we know it. And I'm not the only person out there that loves to smoke a little bit of weed and watch a lot of sports. So if you're anything like me, and you do smoke them, I'd invite you now to smoke them if you got them. But before we do that, of course, we got to kick it to Eric for the intro. So go ahead, Eric. Let's kick it off right. Let's get lit, baby.
Like as soon as you click on the video, it's and then marijuana title cards with smoke coming up. It's like
I may be covered in cat hair, but I still smell good. Baby, let me know, how do I look in my do-rag? Don't lie to me, let me rock you all night long. I'm trying to impress you, girl. Let me know, how do I look in my do-rag? I'm trying to get intimate. Let me love you like you've never been before.
All right, so first things first, kicking off today's episode, I just finished, like 20 minutes ago, just finished watching Wednesday afternoon football and completing the longest week in NFL history. And that's not just an exaggeration. I'm not just saying that because there's been 67 months in 2020 so far. I'm being honestly dead serious. This was the longest week in NFL history. Wednesday afternoon football brought us a seemingly marquee matchup between the Ravens and the Steelers. It's a great divisional matchup, and it's honestly one of the most entertaining divisional rivalries to watch in sports. We all remember the great Ray Lewis and the great Troy Polamalu leading those two defensive units. It's always a hard-hitting, it's always a chippy game. So needless to say, it was an interesting game to watch. Going into the game, though, you're looking at the Baltimore Ravens missing their starting quarterback, starting running back, number 2 running back, number 2 wide receiver, number 1 tight end, including some players on their defense. The Baltimore Ravens had 16 players test positive for COVID-19. So the game got postponed from Thursday night, which was Thanksgiving, to Wednesday afternoon, thus pushing out other games. So honestly, I haven't even been able to keep track of what the schedule is looking like. I'm just kind of gonna let it hit me as it comes, because I was barely even expecting the game tonight to go on. But nonetheless, the game tonight was actually fairly interesting. The Baltimore Ravens fought tooth and nail and almost pulled out a victory against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it was honestly a game that didn't seem like it was going to be very entertaining with all the people not going to be in it. Ended up being an actually good game. Now, what is the main thing that we learned from Wednesday afternoon football about the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Baltimore Ravens? Who was the biggest team affected by this outcome of this game? And I would have to argue and say that it was the Pittsburgh Steelers. If I learned anything from tonight's game, it's that them Pittsburgh Steelers are in trouble. Now you look at me and you say, man, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 11-0. How the fuck dare do you say they're in trouble right now? Because I'm looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers. First of all, Ben Roethlisberger threw the football 53 times tonight in cold weather situations and without his number 1 running back. So there's a little bit of a backstory there on why he threw the ball so much. But coming into cold weather, you definitely, especially playing in Pittsburgh in the AFC North, you definitely cannot be playing an air attack coming into December right now at this current moment. You can't win the game throwing the ball over 50 times a game like that. Another thing that I'm learning about the Pittsburgh Steelers is that, I mean, if you're watching Ben Roethlisberger play football, that man is barely making it through football games. I feel bad. It's like watching a bunch of young people beat up on like an old man in the parking lot. It's really sad to see. Ben Roethlisberger is getting up slower and slower from every hit, and I would not be surprised to see Ben Roethlisberger not make it all the way to the playoffs. Ben Roethlisberger has only played a full 16 games in his whole career twice. It's not because Ben Roethlisberger is a weak person. It's because he's big and because he plays football in a different style than most quarterbacks. He stays strong in that pocket because not many people can do that damage to Ben Roethlisberger like they can to a smaller quarterback like a Joe Burrow or a Daniel Jones. So Big Ben Roethlisberger does actually take a lot of hits, and the Pittsburgh Steelers have not really done the greatest job at protecting him. But Ben Roethlisberger is struggling every game to make it to the end of the game. So you're looking at it right now and you're saying, man, the Pittsburgh Steelers just barely walked out of this game with the Baltimore Ravens missing half of their football team. And in a game where they're pretty much expected to come in at 10-0 and just run all over the Baltimore Ravens, the Ravens shouldn't stand a chance, activating a historic amount of players off their practice squad, activating players that people don't even know, playing their third string quarterback at a certain point in the game. That's not a game that the Baltimore Ravens should have even been in. But the fact that with 5 minutes remaining on the clock, the Baltimore Ravens have an actual chance to win this football game. And depending on that measurement with Benny Snell, that me personally, I do not think Benny Snell got that first down at the end of the game. You leave that 34 seconds on the clock, the Baltimore Ravens still get the ball back off of that long 75-yard Marquise Hollywood Brown touchdown that they just threw the drive before. You're telling me that the Baltimore Ravens actually had a chance to beat the 10-0 Pittsburgh Steelers? And this isn't the first game that we've seen the Pittsburgh Steelers in trouble in a game that they should not be in trouble in. So if I'm learning anything about the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's that when they do come upon those teams in the AFC playoffs, and if they eventually make it farther in that and they make it to the NFC, they are not going to have that ability. Ben Roethlisberger does not have that ability to outscore Patrick Mahomes. He does not have that ability to outscore that Tennessee Titans team. If Ben Roethlisberger and the Pittsburgh Steelers get down, or things don't start swinging, if things aren't swinging correctly in their way on the luck pendulum, then Pittsburgh Steelers are in trouble. I think the Steelers are a great team this season, but nothing that the Pittsburgh Steelers are doing right now is showing me that they're even going to be a real competitive team in the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't get knocked out in their first game in the playoffs. The Pittsburgh Steelers did great this season, but they have a lot to improve on. I think a couple of changes the Pittsburgh Steelers could possibly make in the offseason, and they could seriously become a Super Bowl contending team. But at the current moment, if you're comparing the Kansas City Chiefs with the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Kansas City Chiefs win that coin toss 5 out of 5 times. Continuing our talks about the longest NFL week in NFL history, let's talk about the long-ass week that I just had as an Indianapolis Colts fan. I mean, there's no denying it. There's no hiding from it. The Tennessee Titans just came in. King Henry just came in and literally ran all over us. Derrick Henry put up something like 170 yards, I believe, with 3 rushing touchdowns. Ryan Tannehill put up a rushing touchdown. And honestly, Ryan Tannehill totally stole that touchdown from Derrick Henry. It was a read option. Derrick Henry, he could have handed it off to Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry would have got met at the goal line, but eventually would have scored that touchdown. But Ryan Tannehill had the easier pass, so he took that. So Derrick Henry was honestly robbed of a 4-touchdown day by his own quarterback, and it was a long-ass fucking week as an Indianapolis Colts fan. But I'm not too worried about it. The Indianapolis Colts are still sitting in a good position. I'm not sitting here saying that the Indianapolis Colts are a Super Bowl contending team. You just heard me say what I said about the Pittsburgh Steelers, that they're not a Super Bowl contending team. So if I'm going to sit here with the same tongue and tell you that the Indianapolis Colts are a Super Bowl contending team, I'm fucking lying to you. I'm a Colts fan. I've always got hope for the Colts. But if I'm looking at everything realistically with an unbiased view, I can't seriously say that the Indianapolis Colts are going to be a Super Bowl contender. I'm just hoping that we make the playoffs and can make some noise. But why I'm not worried as an Indianapolis Colts fan is because we're still sitting at 7-4 right now. We're sitting in the AFC wildcard spot. Thankfully, the Ravens did not come back and win that game, because if the Ravens won that game, they already beat us one time this season, so they would win the tiebreaker against us and they would take our spot. But I'm not too terribly worried as an Indianapolis Colts fan for a couple reasons. The first reason is, of course, I got to give you an excuse on why the fuck we just absolutely shit the bed against the Tennessee Titans. And I've got a couple of them for you, actually. So the first one is going to be, of our front 7, defensive lineman and linebacker, we're missing 4 of them. We're missing half of we missed DeForest Buckner, Danico Autry, Bobby Okereke. We're missing 4 key pieces to the middle, the heart of our defense, our defensive front unit. So it's no surprise that Derrick Henry ran like he did against our team. As soon as I saw the Tennessee Titans put up that second touchdown, I looked over and I said, man, it's going to be one of those days, isn't it? Because I could already see that our defense, we were compromised. We're the second best defense in the league right now, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are barely holding on to that number 1 defense in the league, just because they've created more turnovers, and we have allowed a lot of points. We let up a lot of points against the Green Bay Packers, and we just let up a lot of points against the Tennessee Titans. So to still sit here and try to act like we're the number 1 defense, that'd be ridiculous. But we are still the second best defense in the league. We are still one of the toughest defenses to face in the league. But we were compromised right in the middle, right where Derrick Henry runs. Against the Tennessee Titans last 17 days before we played last Sunday, we shut Derrick Henry down into a seemingly pedestrian day. And Derrick Henry still ran for 109 yards. Derrick Henry in no way was pedestrian. But Derrick Henry was definitely pedestrian in the facts of we shut him down from doing what he needed to do to get them where they needed to be, like he did this last Sunday. But another excuse that I have to give to you guys is, when you play a good team, and the Tennessee Titans are a good team, and if nobody's going to sit here and tell me that the Tennessee Titans are not a good team, people have been talking about the Tennessee Titans as one of the very few teams that can actually contend with the Kansas City Chiefs this season. That's why I was so excited when we beat them 17 days prior to our last game. But anytime you match up with a really good team twice in the same 17 days, in the same 2 weeks, yeah, that team's got a really good chance at beating you. They had a good chance at beating us the first time. We took advantage of it. We won the game. We capitalized where we needed to do. But 17 days later, it's a good football team. Any given Sunday, they just came out better that game. We also were a lot weaker on the defensive end of the ball in that game. So in no way am I worried. Also, our upcoming schedule that we still got the Jacksonville Jaguars on the schedule, and we've definitely got some words to be said to the Jacksonville Jaguars after we just gave them that week 1 loss. Because I've just conceded the fact as a Colts fan that we're not going to win week 1 anymore. So I don't care who we're playing in week 1. We're just not going to win that game. I'm feeling great as a Colts fan that the last 2 seasons we have started out 6-4 or better after starting out 0-1, but that's besides the point. Our upcoming schedule consists of Houston twice, which has been, just really an awful team. Not near anything that anybody expected, especially after just throwing away DeAndre Hopkins to the Arizona Cardinals like they did. Now Will Fuller is shooting muscle milk straight into his ass cheeks, and we don't have a good a good divisional matchup remaining on our schedule. We've already completed our 2 hardest games with the Tennessee Titans. The Houston Texans are compromised. They're a weak team. I'm not saying we're going to run through them. It's never a guaranteed game. You just saw what happened with the Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers this evening. But it's not a guaranteed game, but I'm feeling good going into those 2 games. We do also have Jacksonville, and then we also have that Pittsburgh Steelers game, which I'm really excited about that game. It's going to be one of those games like the Green Bay Packers game that it's like if the Colts can come out, if we're healthy, if the Colts come out and play defense, our number 1 defense, like we are the number 1 defense, then we're going to be in a great position. But anytime we come out into an NFL game, which is unfortunate, and we had the same issue with Jacoby Brissett, so I don't want to hear any of that crap from any of those Colts fans that are saying bench Rivers and start Jacoby Brissett. Because as a Colts fan, I had the same feelings with Jacoby Brissett at this point in the league, at this point in the year, that I do with Phillip Rivers. If at any point we come into a game and we're looking and we're going to say, hey, Phillip Rivers, man, Phil, we need you to win this game for us, Phil. We're not going to win that motherfucking game, bro. Phillip Rivers can't come down and win a football game like that. But that's not why we got Phillip Rivers. We got Phillip Rivers to not fuck the game up. We got Phillip Rivers to say, we got the best defense in the league. You just need to score when you get the ball. The defense will do the rest. They'll keep the other offense off the field, and you just don't make mistakes, Phillip Rivers. And any time that we have had to count on Phillip Rivers this season, it's been fucked up. The Colts have just ruined it. Anytime that we have needed Phillip Rivers to come down and score that touchdown, interception. Anytime that we've needed to score a touchdown to stay competitive in this certain game, Phillip Rivers fucks it up. Our defense is winning us those games. Right now, what Phillip Rivers needs to do for the Indianapolis Colts is the same exact thing that Peyton Manning did for the Denver Broncos in their 2 Super Bowl runs. Your job is just to not fuck it up. We got the defense. We got the shit around you that should be good enough to get in contention. Just don't fuck it up, Phil. That's your job. We're not putting anything on your shoulders. We're not saying go out and win us the game. Just don't fuck it up. So as a Colts fan right now, I'm not too terribly worried. Like I said, we got a great upcoming schedule. There's a couple excuses for why we lost that game. We didn't just come out and shit the bed. There were some behind the scenes things going on, and we also had just beat the Tennessee Titans 17 days prior. So as a Colts fan, like I said, I'm not too terribly worried. We're still looking good going into the playoffs. Now talk to me again here in a couple weeks as the playoffs get closer, as the whole playoff schedule becomes clear and we're seeing what the matchups are if we even make the playoffs. We might have a different conversation at that point, but at this current point as a Colts fan, after last week, I'm not hitting the panic button. It was a shitty game. I'm not hitting the panic button at all. The Colts still have chance. They still have hope. I never at any point thought we were a Super Bowl contender, but all I'm asking for is a chance, and that's what we have right now. We still have a chance, and we have a damn good one. Now, getting a little bit out of football for a quick second, if there was any way that we could just have made this weird year in sports any weirder, we just had a fucking fight this last weekend with Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. as the headline. And I'm not talking Mike Tyson Jr. versus Roy Jones Jr. II. No, I'm talking Mike Tyson at 54 years old versus 51-year-old Roy Jones Jr. A matchup that people always wanted back when both fighters were in their prime. And it was a very hyped up matchup. Personally, I'm not gonna lie to you, I didn't even believe that it was real until about 2 weeks before the fight. I thought it was just one of those social media things that everybody was hyping up. I felt the same way about the Mayweather Conor McGregor matchup. But I can't lie to you, this Mike Tyson fight this last weekend was really amazing. Mike Tyson came out and you could tell that it was important for him to rewrite his boxing ending. He came out on another level, and it was really great for somebody who was 9 years old at Mike Tyson's last fight. I didn't even really know who Mike Tyson was. I've never really got to actually watch Mike Tyson box. So it was really kind of cool to come out and actually kind of see some version of what Mike Tyson was as a boxer. It was really spectacular as a young buck myself to come out and see some stuff like that. Like I said, especially if you consider the fact that Tyson hasn't fought in 15 years and his last 2 fights were not anything that Mike Tyson wants to be proud of. Like I said, you could tell it was important for him to rewrite the ending for a good reason. But if you consider the fact that he hadn't fought a fight in 15 years, Mike Tyson looked absolutely amazing at 54 years old in that ring on Saturday night. I have no doubt in my mind that if it was a serious fight, Mike Tyson would not have only won that fight, but Mike Tyson would have put Roy Jones Jr. down at least once, if not knocked him clean the fuck out. Mike Tyson was on Roy Jones Jr.'s head, and at the end of the fight, you could tell the difference between the two fighters. Mike Tyson looked like he could go another 8 rounds, and Roy Jones Jr. looked like he was thankful to be going home. I also have no doubt in my mind that the decision was predetermined. I mean, if you didn't notice, they had two belts at the end. Both fighters got a belt. I have no doubt in my mind that it was a predetermined decision. And it wasn't necessarily a fight. It wasn't a fight like both men would have been fighting in their 30s. It was a fight more or less just to feel alive, more or less to prove to themselves that they still got it. Mike Tyson he's not out here to win championships. He's not out here to win money. Mike Tyson has a very successful marijuana farm. He has very successful businesses. The dude I'm pretty sure he has a bird racing company somewhere. He's got different movies, different Netflix documentaries. Mike Tyson has got money. He's not doing this for the money. And even if you look at what both fighters got paid, you can tell neither one of them was doing it for the money. Roy Jones Jr. has been dubbed the best pound for pound fighter of that decade, even over Mike Tyson at the time. So neither fighter is doing it for clout, doing it to raise their fame, doing it to get some money. Both fighters are more or less just doing it to prove to themselves. They got nothing to prove to us. They got nothing to prove to the world. They just want to prove to themselves that they still got it, that they're still alive. And it was honestly one of the most fun sporting events of the year. It was honestly probably the highlight sport event of the year. And I can't lie to you, it was one of the most fun boxing matches I've ever witnessed in my entire life. I would without a doubt purchase another one of those pay-per-views. And that leads me into the conversation I want to actually have about Mike Tyson's Legends Only League that he started and incorporated. And this pay-per-view that we just witnessed last weekend was the inaugural pay-per-view of Mike Tyson's Legends Only League. Like I said, the premiere night was just an absolute success. The card structure made absolute sense. They had some really good up-and-coming boxing talent on the undercard. They showcased one legitimate boxer in Badu Jack. They even had a really good hype up fight before with the influencers, Nate Robinson and Logan Paul. Despite how boring of a fight that it was, that was one of the main reasons that people were excited about the fight. Besides the fact that Mike Tyson was fighting Roy Jones Jr., everybody was also extremely excited to see that Nate Robinson Logan Paul fight. And then at the end of it all, you have two absolute legends, one of them being Mike Tyson, one of the biggest names in pay-per-view, of all time. You have Mike Tyson and you have two legends headlining the card. The card structure makes complete sense. It's something that makes you want to watch. And it's a recipe that could 100% work. It's definitely not something that you're going to want to see once a month or even too often. Maybe even just once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year maybe, that you do some sort of marquee matchup or on something like that. That's definitely a recipe that could work, that could get people watching and just get some money in and just give some people some entertainment. It's a similar fact that a lot of sports fans have already learned just watching Ice Cube's Big 3 Basketball League. People like to be entertained by those who do it best. People like to watch their favorite athletes do old things in new ways. We've already been teased with more future potential fights involving Evander Holyfield, whether that be Evander Holyfield versus Mike Tyson or Evander Holyfield versus Floyd Mayweather. That's been teased as a potential opponent. But not only that, this Legends Only League is sports agnostic. It's not a boxing only league or even a combat sport only league. No, this being sports agnostic, they've already had conversations about having Formula One, tennis, basketball, other boxing. It's going to be a Legends League of different legends in their own sports and in their own rights, doing what they did best in new ways. The premier event that the Legends Only League put on has shown us the potential that this market actually has, especially in this era and in this in day and age right now with the COVID and everything. They played on the COVID absolutely amazingly. If you go in and look at, I'm not going to get into all the details and all of it, but there are certain things that they did with the lighting and certain things that they would not have been able to do with fans in the crowd because it would have blocked the views of the fans. That made the experience better for the people watching the pay-per-views and the people streaming and the people not able to attend the event. So there was nobody really able to attend at the Staples Center, but between the music performances that they had and just the actual production quality of the stream, this Legends Only League has shown to me that the best is only yet to come when it comes to the Legends Only League. And I'm actually really excited to hear more news and see more events come from Mike Tyson's Legends Only League. I don't like to call it the LOL League. It just seems like a meme though. So I'm just gonna have to stick with the long name and call it the Legends Only League. But make sure you stay in tune for that Legends Only League. It's going to be big. I'm telling you that now. You heard it here first. Legends Only is getting ready to take off. It's only starting. All right, before I close out today's episode of the Huddle Chat Sports Show, I actually want to bring something new to y'all. We're going to be running weekly trivia questions for you. So I'm going to ask y'all the questions, and I'd like you to respond to my question, my answer, with your answer at the Huddle Chat Sports on Twitter or at THC Sports on Facebook. I'll also post the question visibly on those. I'll also post the questions visibly on those social media platforms so you can comment directly under those questions as well. You may also drop your comment on the video directly. I'll be counting all comments. So the first trivia question that I have for you today, we're going to go a little easy. We're going to get easy to start, and it's going to get progressively harder, especially as we get more interaction and we get more people answering and we get more correct answers. I'm going to make it hard on y'all. I don't want it to be easy. I don't want it to be something that you can just Google. So my question for you guys today is going to be, who was named the AP Coach of the Year for the 2014 NFL season? I'm going to repeat it one more time for you guys. Who was the NFL AP Coach of the Year for the 2014 NFL season? Like I said, make sure you drop your trivia answers at the Huddle Chat Sports on Twitter and at THC Sports on Facebook. Next week, we got a lot of big topics coming up. NBA is getting back started. I actually just got a notification while I was recording the episode today that the Rockets just made that big blockbuster trade that we've all been kind of waiting for, and Russell Westbrook is getting sent for John Wall. So we're going to be discussing a lot of NBA stuff coming up. Like I said, we got the NBA coming up here in just a few weeks. We got a lot more NFL news coming up and a lot more wacky, wild sports going on in the NFL, in the world, and in the 2020 year. And going into next year and seeing what we're excited about. But again, man, I'd like to really thank y'all so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Huddle Chat Sports Show. I'm the host, Dallas Clark, also known as Indo as my Nindo, and I'm going to catch y'all next week. Stay safe, stay high, and stay blazing out there, y'all. And don't forget, smoke them if you got them.
I may be covered in cat hair, but I still smell good. Baby, let me know, how do I look in my new